has anyone heard about the Joe Rogan video game thing that happened? So, this was the dumbest controversy I've ever seen. I'll see if I can find it. Joe Rogan video game. Okay, so Joe Rogan's full comments on kids playing video games. Was Joe Rogan right about video games? Sounds like a boomer. PewDiePie reacts to Joe Rogan's comments on video games. PewDiePie responds to Joe Rogan's comments on video games. And a bunch of other people who... Here we go. Is Joe Rogan right about young men and video games? Joe Rogan schooled by Ninja after saying video games was a waste of time. This was the dumbest controversy that I have ever seen regarding Joe Rogan. Basically what he said was that there is a lot of people who play video games who are basically just wasting their life. Whereas what you could be doing is you could be building up some productive skill, and the example that he gave was with jiu-jitsu. Probably not the best example. He probably could have went with, like woodworking or something that you could convert very easily into a job, or programming or something like that where you can very easily convert that into a job. But the example he gave was jiu-jitsu, which is a good example. It might have been taekwondo. No, I think it was jiu-jitsu. But that's still a very productive skill of training a martial art has more benefits outside of just being the skill itself. You have discipline, and you have the community aspect, and a bunch of other things like that that do actually make it a bit more of a productive skill. And he also described playing video games as like being... Oh, my nose is itchy. Playing video games as like being an alcoholic. And for whatever reason, people saw this and then took it as some sort of massive attack on video games and video games as like a community. And I don't understand how this ended up happening. Because basically what he was describing was his experience playing games when he was younger, not even younger, like a couple of years ago. If you go watch his older podcast, he talks about how he would play Quake all of the time. I don't know how he found time for it, but he would play Quake a lot of the time. Yeah, Quake. I thought it might... Was it Unreal Tournament? No, I think it was Quake, not Unreal Tournament. Doesn't matter. It was a shooter that was really popular in the past, and he was getting really into it. And he described it as being a big waste of time, and saying that there was a lot of young men who also had the same sort of problem where they would play video games not to escape from, to escape from the things they actually had to do in their life when they should be doing more productive things. He wasn't saying that it was a bad thing if you come home from like a long day at work and you're like, I'm going to play some, I'm going to play some RuneScape, I'm going to play some Call of Duty, I'm going to play some Fortnite, whatever the kid's playing now. He wasn't saying that it was necessarily a bad thing to, just play some games in your off time. What he was saying was playing games to avoid your productive, things that you should productively be doing was not going to be good for you in the long run. And if the argument that some people do make, especially a lot of younger people now, that they are this is actually going to be a serious problem in the next 10, 15 years. There's a lot of kids now who are growing up and seeing that there's people like Ninja out there and people like Shroud and people like, other big gamers, Ludwig, for example, seeing these people and saying, hey, look, I can play video games and I can, make a career from this. And the amount of people who do this is very, very small. And the guests he had on the time ended up saying, it's like 1 in a million people who end up, making this happen. And Joe Rogan did end up correcting him on this, saying it is much more common than that, but it is still a very rare thing to get into. Maybe 1%, 0.1% of the people who play these games will end up making something productive out of it. And most of the people who are playing them are just doing it because they want to, kill some time. And that's not necessarily a bad thing. If you are playing games to kill some time after you've done the things that you have to do in your life to be productive, that's one thing. But if you're playing, say, 8, 10, 12 hours a day just because either you're trying to avoid what you have to do or because you think you're going to become a professional at this, that's where it can become a bit of a problem. And Joe was saying basically that he was in this position not where he thought that he was going to become a pro at gaming. He already had his other business ventures, but he was playing these games and avoiding the things that he should be doing. And he was saying that this was, you know, like being an alcoholic, like having some other sort of addiction where it's ruining your life. And he wasn't saying that playing games was a bad thing. If you want to play games, that's cool. But make sure that you're also getting what you need to get done in your life, actually done in your life. And, you know, not turning this into a very negative habit. And I think probably the only person I've seen actually have a good take on this and not just get, like, just whining about, oh, Joe Rogan said video game bad. Like, basically the only people who, or the only person who I saw actually have a good take on this was Devin Nash. Now, I've talked about Devin Nash a few times in this episode, but if you're not watching Devin Nash, you should be watching Devin Nash. So I will find the clip that I'm specifically talking about. Basically, yes, this one here. So Gamers versus Joe Rogan. And his thumbnails are actually amazing. Like, the one he did with, the podcast he did with Ludwig, which is 4 hours long. I need to watch that at some point. But it is also 4 hours long. That's a great thumbnail. Anyway, this is the video that I was specifically talking about. And it's not it was Big Nothing Burger, basically. Yeah, pretty much. It was just Joe Rogan talking about his experience playing games and saying that it was a negative experience from him and that a lot of people end up going down the same path. And then when someone like Joe does actually be critical of that path that people are going down, they will be very, very defensive about it. Now, he didn't bring that point up himself, but I'm saying that. When people see that their hobby that has already been attacked a lot gets, I guess, sort of attacked by someone else, they instantly go on the defensive about it. Which, I guess, isn't necessarily a bad thing, but I think that it was very misguided in this place. Basically, Joe wasn't saying anything. He wasn't saying that games were bad. If you want to play games. But also make sure that you're not wasting your life away playing games in the hopes that you're going to make it somewhere. But one thing he did bring up is that if you are determined to be a professional gamer, be a streamer, whatever it is, if you're determined to do that and you're going to put in the reps, you're going to put in the hours, you can do that. If you think you can do it, don't let anyone tell you that you can't do it. For example, in the clip, Joe mentioned that people told him that, or I think he said his parents told him that being a comedian, or maybe it was his friends or something, I don't remember, that being a comedian is a very difficult thing to do, and there's basically no one who's a comedian. And his point was, well, if basically no one's a comedian, that means that someone is, and I'm going to be one of those someones. And if you feel the same way about whether that be game streaming, whether that be about professional game, whether that be about, I don't know, YouTube content creation, whatever it is, if you think that you want to put in the reps and you want to be successful at that and you don't care what anyone else has to say about it, do it. It's your life. Do whatever you want. But convincing people that everyone is going to be able to go down this path it's not going to be good in the long run. And as I was saying earlier, we're going to start seeing some really weird things happen in the next 10 to 15 years. Because when I was a kid, we were only really starting to see the beginnings of people being professional online content creators. When I was a kid, when YouTube first started, I think I found YouTube maybe a year after it started. Maybe the same year it started, I don't remember. 2006, 2007, whenever, I think that might have been a year after YouTube started. Back then, no one made money on the platform. I think Machinima existed maybe the year after that. Maybe I'm wrong, maybe Machinima was around at the time. But this was very early on, and the people who made money online was even smaller than it is now, because you had to go through an MCM, and just, yeah, no one talks about MCMs now because they're dumb. But as time has gone on, the number of people who have been able to succeed online has grown, and the success that these people have had has been much bigger. So people are growing up seeing these people and saying, okay, I want to be that. But they're not putting that level of dedication in there that I guess you can, or you have to put in to actually make it to that point. Because if you do want to make it to that point, it's not just like, oh, you're gonna half-heartedly make content, you're gonna half-heartedly stream games, whatever it is you're doing. You have to put in hours and hours of your time to make it there. You have to put in the reps, and you have to work really, really hard. And you may not even make it. You probably won't. But the only way you're going to is to put in those reps. And you have to put in those reps with the knowledge that you might not make it there. And that is something that most people are not willing to do. And most people shouldn't be willing to do that, because it's not something that most people can do.